Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency. Auto, home, flood, business, 504-556-0809. Dave Miette, INSagency.com.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, tire siping, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I am your host, Eric Asher, and of course we'll cover all the home teams today as we do. Saints, LSU, Tulane, Pelicans. Maybe we'll again look at some of the other teams. We have some time to break it down for us today, one of the best we have. One of my favorite guests, Jude Young of CrescentCitySports.com, my colleague over at 106.1 All Access is his show. Comes on after my program. Jude, welcome to the program. How are you today? Good to have you back.
Doing great. Just another beautiful day in New Orleans and our best time of the year.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Before we get started, you got a lot of things that are going, a lot of irons in the fire. Tell us all about it.
Well, you mentioned it at 106.1 FM, part of Ken Trahan and I's All Access, 6 to 7 o'clock hour on weeknights. I'm always on Tuesday, and this time of year on Friday nights, Les East and I combo to host Countdown to the Original. We always have a theme night at Francesca's by Katie's in Lakeview for a given school that isn't playing on a Friday night. We highlight their coach and their program. Again, 6 to 7, you're invited to come out and join that. Great food, great conversation, and fantastic people. So that is just the radio side of things. Co-owner, of course, of CrescentCitySports.com. This is our best time of year. We're covering high school with our partners like 106.1 and Cumulus New Orleans. And clearly it's good news when Tulane, LSU, and the Saints all have good football teams this time of year. So we cover it all, not just football, but Pelicans coming up with training camp. The ball just keeps rolling. It's the time of year that we look forward to, and we hope to give the best information we can for the folks out there who follow us at Crescent City Sports.
As I say, each and every time we talk about Crescent City Sports, it's one of my go-to. Again, fantastic writers, people that are homegrown, that know this city, that know the teams around the state. And again, I would subscribe if you get an opportunity. Again, put it on your favorites on your computer so you're seeing it each and every day.
Let me throw out one more thing. College basketball. I am the voice of the UNO Privateers. Really excited about this loaded roster that the Privateers have this year. As a matter of fact, as we speak with this program, it's picture day for the team as they're loading up towards the preseason and their full practice schedule. So excitement brewing out on the lakefront and at college basketball locales around the country. We almost forget, but it's right around the corner, about 6 or 7 weeks away.
Yeah, staying with that theme for a moment, they announced the Hall of Fame inductees, and again, our good friend Scott Craig is being inducted into the UNO Sports Hall of Fame with some really great names that'll be involved in that. That'll be in November, and of course, as you mentioned, they look like they have a really good team this year for Coach Les.
There's no doubt. You return your starting five from a great run at the end of last season, including the leading three-point shooter in America, Jordan Johnson. That's reason alone to check out the Privateers on the lakefront. And added depth. The recruiting class appears to be very good between the high school signees and a couple of key transfers. So really looking forward to seeing if UNO can match up with the Will Wade machine at McNeese. That's going to be a national story in the Southland Conference. And the Privateers might be the most well-equipped team to try to compete against what looks like a dynamite group that Wade's thrown together in a matter of months.
People going, wait, it's football season. Believe me, it's right around the corner, okay? The Pels are starting in early October with again, their training camp preseason, and of course, toward the end of October, again, the regular season will start. So again, we'll be in basketball before you know it. I do want to mention Francesca this week. St. Martin's is the school of school. So again, if you guys again have any ties to St. Martin's, get out there and again support your team over at Francesca by Katie.
And a great point, because Harlem Berry was there at the school night last year. If you don't know who that is, he might be the biggest recruit in the class of 2025. LSU, Alabama, Ohio State, you name it, and he's playing for St. Martin's. Fantastic running back who plays on both sides of the ball, track star, you name it, and a really nice young man. So another reason to maybe come out and meet somebody who could be very famous someday, already becoming famous locally now.
You're not kidding there. Let's talk about the Saints. Before we look back at Carolina, I want to talk about what's happened thus far this week. The Saints' first injury report came out yesterday. Jamal Williams, again, has the hamstring injury. He will not participate. He did not participate. He will not play this week. Foster Moreau had an ankle injury. We'll have to kind of keep tabs on him the rest of the week to see if he'll be available. He has been a guy that has really helped the Saints in terms of, again, putting him next to Penning and being able to help, again, with again, blocking on passing downs. Taysom Hill was limited with a knee injury. That's not good news. Again, even though, again, Kendre Miller was full go and with a hamstring and expected to be able to play on Sunday. Again, we will watch and see what happens there with Taysom Hill, if that was just a precautionary measure or if there is an issue there. Marcus May has been suspended for the DUI back in February of 2021 down in Florida. Again, he will be eligible to come back now in week 6 against Houston. It's a 3-game suspension. Him and Matthew are playing so well as a tandem now. It'll be interesting to see again who steps in, Jordan Howden, Amade, or again possibly Lonnie Johnson Jr. I don't want to hear JT Gray because he's a special teams guy, and I don't want to see him back in that defensive backfield. But again, they got 3 other choices. I will turn to you first with that. Your thoughts on again how they will now again replace Marcus May, who has really played well the first 2 weeks. He has 13 tackles, an interception, a sack. It's going to be missed.
There's no question, because you knew what those 2 30-plus-year-old veterans were going to bring you, and they've formed some chemistry now working together in year 2. So you mentioned the names that could replace, and it really could be a group effort to replace May while he's out. Lonnie Johnson Jr. can play all over the place. Hugo Amadi, people might remember in week 1, able to step in for a while when there was an injury and actually made a play on a key third down with a pass deflection. And Jordan Howden, somebody that even though he's a rookie, he was a 5-year college starter at Minnesota. He's somebody that they trust to be able to go in and play his role. And I think that's what it's going to be. You're going to mix and match these guys to some extent based on packages that are on the field. I don't know who's going to be out there in the base packages, but I trust Dennis Allen. He'll be able to figure out that side of the ball. He always seems to.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. Some had mentioned on my radio show this week that maybe May, because he is out, that Matthew may move to free safety, and they may put one of those guys in the box to play a little closer to the line. Your thoughts?
That makes a lot of sense. Even though I don't think Matthew is a natural free safety, he's much better the closer he plays to the line of scrimmage. With his experience and understanding of the defense, he can play a little bit of that quarterback, arrange things in the back, and make sure that everybody is in their right spot. Because those pre-snap reads, those last-minute decisions, the looks you want to give initially, and how the offense reacts to it, you've got to have somebody who's a veteran. And the experience that Matthew brings to the role makes him the obvious choice to put him in a spot where he can be the quarterback of the back line of the defense.
It's a loss, no matter what. I mean, again, it's unfortunate maybe again that it just didn't happen early in the season, where again you could be getting him back around the same time as Alvin Kamara. But it is what it is. They'll have to adjust to that. That's the 3rd player now that has been suspended, on the Saints, with again Hainer, with the PEDs, and then of course the situation with May and also Kamara. All right, Saints are 2-0 for the first time in was it 3? Is it 10? Is it 10 years? It's 10 years, right? And then of course they're 2-0 in the division with a two-way tie now with Tampa and also Atlanta. The one thing that again that I have noticed over the first 2 weeks of the season is pretty clean games.
Right.
Last year, a lot of penalties, a lot of self-inflicted wounds on whether it be penalties, missed assignments. I'm not saying there haven't been missed assignments. There have been, but again, it has been pretty clean in terms of the game. They had minus 32 yards last week, and those they had on those that were accepted. They had some costly penalties with a Debo in terms of the holding.
Yes.
But for the most part, they've been a pretty disciplined team.
Right, you're not making mistakes. It's one thing when you're a defensive back who's known to be handsy is flagged a couple times for being a little bit too much, so he's trying to do his job. You're not making mistakes. You're not having personal fouls, pre-snap penalties, and that's a real improvement when you look at the numbers from last year. It was about self-inflicted wounds, turnovers, and penalties, and they've improved in both of those categories. They didn't win the category last week. They could have if it wasn't for one of those penalties, but only one turnover on the road against Carolina in prime time, and winning the battle with the big interceptions against the Titans. That's huge, and that's why they're winning, because a lot of these NFL games are close, and it's a team usually that makes the fewest mistakes and pulls it out. Yeah.
Defense has been the theme so far for this team. Another great defensive effort: 4 sacks, 7 quarterback hits, 5 tackles for loss. They held Carolina 4 for 14 on third down. They were 1 for 3 in the red zone. They went almost 8. They almost went 8 quarters without giving up a touchdown. With that last, again, I don't want to call it, kind of a, Oh,
you're going to enrage some people out there if you say the word prevent defense. But a softer defense than what you had been playing the entire game and dominating.
No doubt. And they let them go right out the field. It was what it was. It is, again, hopefully that, but you cannot. All 3 levels of this defense have been playing very well.
Right, and the key was we didn't know about the defensive front, particularly at tackle. You go out and you sign 2 free agents to replace 2 that you lost. You spend a first-round pick on another, and it all works out. Shepard, Saunders, and obviously what Bresee is bringing, at least on passing downs, with the potential for more. And Malcolm Roach played well in the preseason. He looks like he's an ascending player. So suddenly that's your rotation, and it's one of the better ones in the NFL, the way they're performing through 2 weeks. The bigger physical defensive ends working together. Carl Granderson looked like he was ready to take a leap, and he certainly has, coming off of the right side. It's a shame about Peyton Turner being injured, but again, at least you have the rock that is Cam Jordan, and Tano Passamoa, somebody you can just depend on as a Swiss Army knife when you need him out there. So that's a really good rotation. You hope it stays healthy because it allows the Saints to be physical at the line of scrimmage. They do a great job of pushing the line of scrimmage back in all areas, because they're so physical, and that little added bit of quickness that Bresee brings on passing down helps you get off the field on third down. So you just love what you've seen so far. Maybe not against the 2 best offensive lines you're going to see, but I'm not sure how many good offensive lines there are in the NFL, New Orleans included at this point.
And we'll get into that in just a moment. That's been the issue. Well, I said this the other day. Granderson is more and more reminding me of Cam Jordan. The ability to stay on the field, to be able to again defend against the run, and he has been again a ferocious pass rusher. Give me your thoughts.
Well, he should have been drafted. People look at him as another undrafted find, but he had an off-the-field issue that caused him not to be drafted. That was cleared up later on, and the Saints took a chance on him, and clearly he's been nothing but an exemplary teammate, citizen, and member of the organization while continuing to get better. He's not the same player as Trey Hendrickson's because he is more of a physical type of end, but his slow but steady development does remind you of Hendrickson. So that means he's now somebody the Saints have to pay, and I don't think they're going to make what many feel like was a mistake the second time around. They've got to get him under contract sooner than later, because you don't find too many guys who can play all 3 downs as well as he can, and unlike Marcus Davenport, knock on wood, it seems like he's got more durability in his favor.
No doubt about it. The second level has been really good for the Saints. Demario Davis, Werner as well. Davis, again, has the fountain of youth because, again, a lot of people thought he was really slowing down last year. We haven't seen that the first 2 games of this season.
Right. We have to wonder over the long term, having a 34-year-old defensive end, a 34-year-old linebacker. You worry about Jordan and Davis, but the Saints have managed them the right way to keep them fresh, and they know how to take care of themselves. They're highly intelligent people on and off the field, so they understand the year-round all-around effort that it takes to give yourself the best chance to be healthy, to not wear down. Saints are going to need that from them, but they're not asking as much as from Demario Davis, including they've had a good enough pass rush that they're not asking him to be as active as a blitzer. That's just another way to keep him healthy, where he's just back there on the second line of the defense doing his job. And it's great to have somebody like Pete Werner, who seems like he doesn't take a false step. He reads plays well, and such a sure tackler. When you have two guys like that when they get their hands on the ball carrier, they take care of business. That eliminates those big plays that are the difference in the NFL between drives being successful or not.
Yeah, and of course, you look at the defensive backfield right now. Adebo, look, first of all, it comes down to, again, who's officiating the game.
Right.
Okay? Because if you get an official who's going to be very, very strict with the rules, then again, you're going to see some flags against the Saints because they are a very physical defensive backfield. But, Lattimore's back to, Young didn't even look his way last week, right? Adebo's been physical. Taylor seems like, again, look, he went against Thielen last week, who was, that is a savvy veteran. I thought he held his own. I thought, again, he made some mistakes, but I think he's getting better every single week. And, you look at the defensive backfield as a whole, safeties and corners, I think they're playing exemplary right now.
Well, Taylor was the real concern because if they would have had somebody else that would have been the option in the slot, and obviously they decided that Bradley Roby wasn't it and parted ways, then Taylor would be the other outside corner on this team. But they wanted to get their best cover guys on the field, and what Taylor brings to the table is not just somebody who can cover in the slot, but he is a physical defender. He can help defend the run. He can be a factor in the box. So that makes him the ideal guy you look for in the slot, who can match up with all kinds of athletes, your smaller slots, your bigger guys, because he can handle all physical aspects of that part of the role. And you can see he's come a long way in just a few weeks with his comfort level there. He simply wasn't comfortable with it in the preseason. You could see that, but he's a quick learner and he has all the talent. And if we remember his scouting report coming into the draft a couple of years ago was they thought that he was more of a slot guy than an outside guy. I think he can play either place, but you can have that level of a player in the slot when nowadays in the NFL 70+% of the time or more you're going to have 5 defensive backs on the field. The fact that he can hold his own against the run and can cover one-on-one, that's a strong, especially when you talk about the pass coverage aspect of it, that's stronger than the Saints have ever been as far as somebody in that position, and that includes Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who wasn't the best cover guy, was better off playing off. Taylor can come up on the line of scrimmage and play one-on-one and keep up with somebody. To have that extra tool in your bag for Dennis Allen and scheming people is huge, because so many people want to attack you offensively with receivers in the slot.
Yeah, no doubt. I do want to give some credit to Dennis Allen and Pete Carmichael. And I know Pete Carmichael's, again, a whipping boy in this town. But again, I thought that, first of all, I think Dennis Allen is feeling very comfortable as head coach, more comfortable than we saw last year. I think he's less stoic. I think he's more emotional. I mean, I used to get frustrated when he'd give me the, the hands folded, again, like Byron Scott back in the day with the Hornets. But again, feasting on these young quarterbacks. We saw the list of young quarterbacks that were going to be on the schedule this year. And again, you saw this week against Young, disguising looks, going from man-to-man to zone. Again, looking like he's going to get pressure with multiple, multiple players, only going with 4. Again, it was almost back to, again, what he was doing as a DC. Really was impressed with him. Give me your thoughts on what you've seen out of Allen so far.
Well, you covered it, doing that against a young quarterback, but also causing confusion and being able to make plays off of a veteran quarterback in Ryan Tannehill, who's somebody who's been in an offense for years now with Tennessee, where his job is to be careful with the football. They're a team built on running the ball and relying on their defense, and the Saints were able to create havoc in that area. Against a veteran that you say, well, the Saints must be doing some impressive things pre-snap to confuse a guy like this to wind up with 3 turnovers that were the difference in the ball game. So you're impressed that they did that against a decent vet, nothing special, but also not letting a rookie ever be in his comfort zone until that final drive when you're just trying to run clock at that point. I'm not surprised, because they're healthy on all 3 levels of the defense. They're performing well on all 3 levels, and Dennis Allen does do a good job game planning, especially quarterbacks who aren't natural runners. You can see that Bryce Young isn't a natural runner. He's got the quickness to run straight ahead and run through a seam when something's breaking down, but when you force him out of the pocket, he's not a dangerous athlete like some of the guys in the league, like the one they're going to see this week. week, who's the first one you worry about in those situations with Jordan Love. So to be able to close that pocket on a guy who's clearly no more than 5'10", seeing that Atlanta had success with it, and then adding with your defense to make it even more difficult on him. They shouldn't have sniffed the end zone in that game, to be honest, if the Saints wouldn't have let them. And that's a credit to the ability to make Bryce Young uncomfortable the entire game.
And Carmichael, again, I was really impressed with what he did with Taysom Hill this past week. You know, they ran him out of the eye. They threw a pitch to him. He ran up the middle. He played quarterback. He threw the ball. He caught the ball. Again, they were kind of forced into that because of the injury, but it was good to be able to see, again, Carmichael. And even Carmichael, again, just the offense as a whole, he seems to be much more comfortable and much more aggressive.
Right. I think there's a negative that's obvious from the start with somebody who's been involved with an offensive system, essentially, that's been in place since 2006. There's a predictability factor that can hurt you a little bit, and it's very hard to not get comfortable with what you're used to doing because other teams can read the mail, so to speak, and know what's coming. So that's a challenge that sometimes I think he doesn't overcome as much as you would like. But what he overcame specifically against a solid Panthers defense, prime time on the road, when you have the running back injuries. I mean, this was a running back room that was supposed to be deep and strong. You knew you'd be without Kamara for 3 weeks, but then Jamal Williams, who's a durable guy, gets hurt, and you're without Kendre Miller because of the hamstring, and you're down to Tony Jones and actually using Taysom Hill as a traditional running back, and coming up with the running game you had to have in that game to protect that offensive line. That was the weakness of the Carolina defense. You really have to run straight at them. Very good rushing the passer, better as you go layer to layer of their defense, linebacker, secondary. So the Saints needed to have that running game. They found it more consistently in the second half, and not easy to do. Actually handing the ball off to Taysom Hill. We haven't seen that before, but they had to do it.
Even catching the pitch, you know, again.
Right, exactly. You don't see that normally, but the fact the Saints were able to adjust on the fly in an emergency situation because they had to have that as part of their success plan and make it work out is a credit to Carmichael and all the offensive coaches.
Definitely agree. All right, let's it's all been roses and candy, but let's get to the issue with this team right now, which is the offensive line. Gave up 3 sacks in the first half, another one in the second half. You look at that, over the last 2 weeks, 8 sacks in 2 weeks. Offensive line right now is not very good. You've got a situation with Penning, who's still trying to learn how to be an offensive tackle in the NFL. No excuse for the rest of the guys across that line. They've been playing for a while now. Again, they were more physical against with the run in the second half, but they are porous in terms of pass protection. Give me your thoughts.
Well, let's look at the big picture of, we're talking about every unit on the field. We're talking about defensively where they have an elite player, an established elite player on every level of the defense. Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, Marshawn Lattimore. Let's look at the offensive side of the ball where they have different options when everybody's healthy at tight end. Maybe not an elite player, but Jawan Johnson's a weapon that you'd like to see them use more. Bringing in Foster Moreau, somebody who is an every down tight end who can really block well, and a security blanket for the quarterback. And then at receiver, the Chris Olave draft pick is looking brilliant. Going up in the draft to get him, he is a difference maker. You get a Rashid Shaheed who, off the street, undrafted. He's a difference maker, a playmaker for this team. And then obviously Michael Thomas being healthy and not quite the same as he was in his prime, but still a physical, reliable receiver who can help you move the chains. And then you have the offensive line where the closest thing to an elite player is Ryan Ramczyk. And I think we've seen the best of Ryan Ramczyk in the NFL. With the knee issue moving forward, you're just trying to get as much out of him long-term as you can. And it's a shame because he's still so young. And after that, you have average to below average players. I mean, James Hurst is your left guard, and he's much better off being the 6th offensive lineman.
I agree.
He's an average player, but mentally he's an elite player, so it helps to have him in there to help with Trevor Penning in the growing process. But at the same time, you don't like to see them on twists and stunts making all these errors. Not just the straight ahead blocking, one-on-one that Penning's had. But we've seen errors in that area that has to improve. That communication must get better.
Agreed.
You know, Eric McCoy's a good center. He's not a great center. And Cesar Ruiz didn't have his best night against Carolina, but it looks like he's an ascending player. I don't think he has all-pro ceiling. I don't think anybody feels that way. So, yeah, this is an offensive line that's limited to start out with and doesn't have a lot of exciting depth either. So it's going to be a continued concern moving moving forward. And that's why what we saw in the second half against the Panthers is crucial. This team has to be able to run the ball. They don't have a mobile quarterback with Derek Carr.
Right.
They can't just go to the Taysom Hill offense and have him provide all of the key running moments. They've got to be able to run from scrimmage, and this offensive line is more equipped to be a straight-ahead run-blocking line than it is to ask them to pass block when the defense knows you have to throw the ball.
And then there's the Derek Carr situation. First of all, again, look, I think he's played okay. I think that, again, he's still trying to get on the same page with wide receivers,
No doubt.
which again, they talked about during their training camp. That has not come to fruition yet, especially in this offense. You look at again, his ability to be able to create time with his feet, as he did in Week 1 against Tennessee,
Right.
where again looked like he was kind of, again, maybe sliding away from Penning, more toward Ramczyk. This week, there was no fluidity in terms of his ability to be able to move in the pocket. He was, in a lot of cases, moving backwards, again, not getting the ball out quick enough. And then, of course, the problems with the 2 interceptions. Look, throwing the double coverage last week, triple coverage this week. You know, you can shrug it off as saying, look, you know, it was a bad play on my part, but again, if they don't get those 2 explosive plays this week, they probably don't win. They don't get the explosive plays last week, they probably don't win the game. Right. So again, those are could be costly interceptions there. Talk about Carr, his maturation process within this offense.
Well, that's the key within the offense first, because if you're going to approach like most NFL teams do the preseason, even with a new quarterback who's been with a different organization for nearly a decade, and you don't get him on the field in preseason games, it's going to hurt you. It's going to hurt the timing with the receivers. One, Rashid Shaheed was injured throughout the preseason. You're trying to be careful with Michael Thomas because he's coming back from so many different injuries. So you lose those snaps, you lose that continuity, and you're sort of learning on the fly here in the regular season and trying to adjust in games versus having that comfort level of we know what we do well, the simpatico sort of deal between a good quarterback and a good wide receiver, that they almost know what they're going to do based on when they see a look coming to the line of scrimmage. That has to evolve. So yeah, there's going to be growing pains there. But the bigger picture with Carr, talking about the 2 bad interceptions, he's always going to be a guy who has that gunslinger mentality.
Right.
He's effective when he's making plays down the field, and his throws down the field were the reasons why the offense was able to put up enough points to win these 2 games when in other areas they were struggling to maintain drives. So you've got to live with that, unfortunately, with him, and hope that it lessens a bit over time when he's more comfortable with the offense and feels like there are other things there that he can take advantage of to not force the ball down the field. Because you're going to see that, especially when he's under duress. Every once in a while, it's been 9 years with the Raiders where that was an issue at times. But I think that's going to continue to evolve as long as the receivers stay healthy. And if they can mix in more throws to the tight ends, which he did a lot in Oakland/Las Vegas, especially when Darren Waller was there and playing at a Pro Bowl level. I think Juwan Johnson, once they integrate him more, and obviously the addition of somebody like Alvin Kamara, and hopefully to a lesser extent Kendre Miller, more dangerous backs in space that bring that satellite back ability. This offense needs that too. The easy throws that allow guys to make plays versus asking the quarterback to constantly find his wide receivers down the field will make Carr better, and he'll naturally get better as he gets used to the chemistry that you grow over time with the receivers that are good enough to win a lot of NFL games.
Yeah, 2 points. First of all, if this was Jameis Winston, he would be getting crushed right now.
Sure, there's no doubt.
He'd be getting crushed, okay? The other part of it is, and I mentioned this on the radio show this week, Carr is not Breeze. Breeze comes in, again, and into this system. That system was pretty much, again, built around him and what he could do. We saw that change over his time here in New Orleans, again, to what he was when he first got here, to, again, the limitations with his arm by the time he left. It used to be the receivers had to get on the same page with Breeze. Now Carr's trying to get on the same page with the receivers, right?
Right.
So things have changed, and I think people have to be a little bit patient with him, because I think people look at this and say automatically, well, Breeze was able to do it. Well, Breeze was in this system from jump with Peyton, and of course it evolved over, again, what was it? You know, his time here in New Orleans. Should there be a patience factor with Carr going forward, or again with a guy that's had 143 starts in the NFL? Should people again maybe not be as patient?
There has to be a patience factor, because we've only seen 2 regular season games with a lot of flux in the backfield at running back that doesn't help you, and the weakest part of your football team being the offensive line in front of Carr. And there has to be something that grows as well as far as chemistry goes between the offensive coordinator, Carmichael, and Carr. They've needed to tailor the offense on the fly more towards what Carr's comfortable with. That's why a John Gruden, who coached him to his best season with the Raiders, was brought into camp to advise and give some pointers as to what Carr is comfortable with. But you're really only going to figure that out in games, in film room, looking back at what you just did and what you're trying to do against the next opponent. You should expect that to continue to get better. And the thing is, I don't know how good Carr can be as far as the difference between being an average team and a good team and a great team. But I do know that he's got the ability to make throws to win games, and you haven't had that on a consistent basis since later, back in Breeze's career. The last few years, he was so limited, and then the quarterbacks that replaced him, you couldn't either trust them or they weren't capable of doing it, like Dalton's limitations. Again, the Saints don't win these two games if Carr doesn't make big throws down the field, didn't have the guts, especially on that third down against Tennessee, to say, we're going after it, we're putting the game away here. He gives you that, and I think the explosive plays are going to come more and more in the passing game. As he gets comfortable, Carmichael understands him, and most importantly, they find enough of a running game to back off that pass rush, to make defenses respect, especially when you talk about DBs, safeties, make defenses respect the running game enough that they have to cheat up and worry. A step or two with guys like Olave and Shaheed going down the field can be the difference between a big play and not, and Carr can make those passes happen.
No doubt about it. I mean, again, between Shaheed and Olave, what they've been able to do, and then Michael Thomas now being the underneath guy, those are weapons. All right. You look at this team now, and the defense is playing well in the red zone. The offense continues to struggle. We had a question from one of our viewers. Why is Jimmy Graham not getting in the red zone? Why are they not using their weapons in the red zone is a big question.
That's a question, because once you actually get down there, why don't you have those packages like we saw a little bit of in the preseason to be able to utilize somebody like Graham? I get between the 20s when you're out there and saying our best personnel is having Shaheed as the third receiver with Olave and Thomas. You can't argue that at this point. But yeah, you need to attack in different ways in the red zone. If you have to shift immediately into your Taysom Hill package as well, that's another reason why it's easy to get extra tight ends on the field. And because of Hill as a running threat, you should be able to design a lot off of that, not just the guy in motion distracting the second and third level of the defense so Hill can run. You've got to work that in, whether it's Carr or Hill taking those snaps. And again, I'm a little disappointed in what we've seen in that area and expect that to improve, because it has to. You can't struggle to put these drives together most of the game where you're going 10-plus plays to get down there and then stall out and settle for field goals. Because even though you may be getting points, and so far Blake Grupe has been automatic.
Yes, he has.
3 points, that's not 7. And that leaves the other team in the game, and you're going to face better quarterbacks than somebody like Bryce Young, including, I think, this week with Love playing at home. He's shown enough that they can put more points on the board if you let them hang around, even if you're having success.
Yeah, and that's where I want to go next before we go to break here. Taking on Green Bay, their home opener. I watched Love last week. Let me say this right now. Those 3 years sitting behind Aaron Rodgers, again, he was obviously paying attention. I'm not saying, again, he's ready to be a big splash in the NFL, but again, in the first 2 games, he's been fine. He has a lot of unknown weapons on that team. They have a young team, a young core of weapons there as well. Talk about this game. Obviously, again, big for the Saints to start off 3-0, but again, they're in enemy territory once again.
There's no doubt that it's a tough trip to go to Green Bay. You catch them off a loss in a game that they were up 12 late and couldn't hold on to it, but you're getting some breaks here. Christian Watson still not practicing full at this point. He's their best talent at the receiver position, although Romeo Doubs and others, they've got some guys.
They really do.
And they've been able to move the ball and make plays in the passing game with other things not going their way despite not having Watson so far. Yes, Love has been efficient, and particularly when they have bigger offensive line problems right now than the Saints.
Yes, they do.
There's a report out that David Bakhtiari may miss another game. That's their left tackle. That's their best lineman, and we already know their starting left guard is unavailable. And we know teams in the league simply don't have depth. The Saints should have a real advantage there. The key will be if Aaron Jones, who missed the Falcons game last week, is back. They have to have him at running back in order to have what they need in the run running game and the back receiving as well. A.J. Dillon's not it. If they have to attack with A.J. Dillon and his depth behind him, that's a huge advantage to the Saints. But I don't know how well the Packers are going to be able to run the ball anyway with the offensive line injuries. This is the spot where it could be another low-scoring game or a play here or there might make the difference. But Green Bay's defense is healthy.
Yes, yeah.
It's pretty good, and the Saints have to protect Carr, and no matter who's running the football, have enough balance there so that Carr could then play off of that and make those big plays down the field. Jair Alexander is going to be trying to shut down Chris Olave, but that doesn't mean the Saints won't have other matchups they can take advantage of. And if the defense is doing its job, they're going to have a great chance to win a lower scoring game again.
He's Jude Young, CrestCitySports.com, also 106.1 FM, the voice of UNO basketball. I'm Eric Asher. We'll take a quick break to hear from our underwriters. We'll come back. We'll talk about LSU, Tulane. Hopefully you have time for the Pels. All that coming up here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Stay tuned.
Air conditioning, heating, and refrigeration has been family owned and operated since 1989. Burkhardt has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhardt's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhardt's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhardt's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Acadian Custom Shutters is locally owned and operated, specializing in interior and exterior shutters and window coverings, as well as awnings and patio covers. Acadian Custom Shutters offers American products with personal service and workmanship, serving the South Shore, North Shore, and Mississippi Gulf Coast. More information is available at 985-893-3119 or AcadianCustomShutters.com.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Jude Young, CrestCitySports.com, 106.1 FM, and of course the voice of UNO basketball is our guest. Let's go to the college game. LSU 41-14 over Mississippi State, 12th in the AP, 13th in the coaches poll. Before we get started, again, prayers for Greg Brooks Jr., the LSU nickelback and safety who was diagnosed with what has been called a large brain tumor. Doctors removed that large mass last Friday. He is in recovery now. He was experiencing vertigo and dizziness during fall camp. They sent him in for an MRI, and unfortunately, again, he has turned up with a brain tumor. A huge. We all pray for the young man. A huge loss, obviously, again for LSU as well, for a guy that was playing really good ball and a leader on that team.
Well, thank the Lord, or whoever you prayed to, that he was a major college football player, because in other circumstances, the young man may be dead. He's got a chance at life no matter what happens with football. The product of West Jeff was a real leader on that defense and a great guy, just universally thought of just a good human being. So let's hope he has a good life no matter what happens with football.
I would agree. And of course, he had told Brian Kelly from his hospital bed he was coming back to play this year. We can only hope. But again, our prayers are with him. And again, he's a huge loss for the LSU community, no doubt about it. All right, let's get to the game. It was everything we thought LSU would be. Well, defensively on all three levels playing very, very well. Offensively, again, only one that really, again, Campbell had a tough game.
Yeah.
Other than that, again, I thought the offensive line played pretty well. Again, they found two backs in Diggs and Jackson now. This was an incredible game for Jaden Daniels, who again seems to have a lot of naysayers within the LSU community. They're still, pushing for again the backup quarterback. He proved again 30 for 34, 361. him. 10.6 yards per pass, 2 touchdowns, ran for 2 touchdowns, 15 for 64 on the ground. He was outstanding. This is the LSU team we thought we were going to see at the beginning of the season against Florida State.
Right. It makes it even more disappointing that their first 5 quarters, if you count the second game against Grambling, were so disappointing in different ways. Now they're starting to find their legs and have that confidence in their ability, and it does start with Daniels. Now, a lot of it is, I'm going to say, and I want to see what Mississippi State does against South Carolina. They looked horrific on both sides of the ball. And now you can say LSU made them look bad, but it was a little bit more than that. But give the Tigers credit. An 11 a.m. game, first true road game. They took full advantage and they played efficient football.
And a tough place to play, right?
No doubt, yeah. The sound of the cowbells makes it difficult for an offense in order to do what they need to do pre-snap to be in the right spots, especially when LSU lives in the shotgun. But what Daniels did that was so impressive, a couple of things. The one that was so noticeable with Neighbors down the field, able to put loft under the ball and lead the receiver and allow for big plays down the sideline. Haven't seen that consistently from Daniels. That was some of the development that was happening during the offseason, working on becoming a better passer. We finally saw it there. And then just dumping the ball off at times over the middle. LSU not throwing to the middle of the field. I'm not going to call that a Daniels thing. I'm going to call that a design thing. And questions I have about offensive coordinator Mike Denbrock, because you're limiting your offense by not attacking the middle third of the field. At least having those backs release from blocking and have that be part of your offense as you move forward, getting Mason Taylor back healthy at tight end. Use him more over the middle so that everything's not deep sideline, east-west passes, and limiting the quarterback and making it easy for the defensive backs to be able to deal with a talented group of LSU receivers if it's a little better coached defense than what Mississippi State put out there. Again, Zach Arnett, their former defensive coordinator, is their head coach. I think he's proven in that game he's in way over his head. They looked horrible. But LSU took full advantage of it. Again, the efficiency of Daniels, when he's comfortable in the pocket, he looks like a more efficient passer, puts the ball where it needs to be. That's huge. And they had a running game. What we didn't see against Florida State, an injured Logan Diggs. The transfer makes a huge difference. And we knew they were going to work Caleb Jackson, because he's the most talented running back on the roster. They have 8, but the true freshman is special. And you saw him run over one defender. It was all over the national highlight shows and social media. He's going to mix in even more. That's going to give LSU a physical running game so that they can use those reads and run between the tackles, freeze linebackers and safeties, and that opens up everything in the passing game as long as Daniels makes the right decisions in that area, which he also struggled with against Florida State, but he's been fantastic the last 2 weeks.
You mentioned not going over the middle. It's so funny you say that because, again, there's some next-gen stats with Derek Carr where he did not go over the middle again in the last game. And that has kind of been the knock on Daniels. Again, not willing to really throw the ball over the middle.
Right. And again, I don't know how much that is because I haven't looked at game after game of what he played at Arizona State, but it looks like design to me. We don't get to watch the game on the All-22. I think throwing over the middle is riskier, and I think Brian Kelly is the man in charge of how open the risk they're going to be, and he's a little bit risk averse. The more you throw it over the middle, the more chances bad things can happen. But you need to take advantage of the ability to use slants and crossing routes a little bit more and make life easier for the quarterback that way if you execute properly. I'd like to see more of that because you've got better opponents ahead that are going to challenge you more and not make it as easy as Mississippi State allowed you to basically target defensive backs one-on-one and go to your all-American receiver as much as LSU was able to do.
And of course, again, those receivers were outstanding.
Sure, no doubt.
All the way across the board. Defensively, we're starting to see maybe Perkins come into his own a little bit. Again, 4 tackles. He had 2 solo, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss, 1 pass defense. I mentioned this on the radio show the other day. I'm watching Micah Parsons for Dallas, okay? And I'm watching the way Dallas utilizes him and moves him all over the field. And the first thing I'm thinking of is, again, I know Parsons is 6'5" and Perkins is 6'1", but again, you got Smith, Wingo, you go across the board again in terms of, again, where they are too deep in terms of defense. If I'm putting Perkins on the field with again, Smith and Wingo, who are you double teaming? So to me, again, continue to move him around. We saw him in pass defense as well, but that's a good problem to have. But hopefully, again, that House is looking at this and saying, okay, I've got Smith back. He's working his way into shape. Wingo's been a guy that's been a terror up the middle. They should be able to put pressure on the passer and make it very, very difficult for whoever they play.
I know Kelly made an excuse that, oh, we were using Perkins in roles that we think helped develop him as a pro. But newsflash, a 212-pound guy isn't going to be playing middle linebacker in the NFL.
Right.
You don't waste a speedy guy like that as a spy when he's such an impact player when you allow him to attack the football. So moving him to outside linebacker and bringing him up on the edge more, particularly in passing downs, that's how you have to use him. And let the NFL figure out what they're going to do with this guy. He may not have a position in the pros. Right. He might be a specialty player, but on the college level, he should be an All-American who's constantly around the ball affecting games. And you're starting to see that, and you've got to continue to see it because he's one of those guys that you force people to scheme to stop when he's constantly on the attack. You can't have him be somebody who we're worried about a mobile quarterback and playing off the line of scrimmage and just floating around aimlessly in space. He needs to be playing down.
I would agree. This was a game where I thought all three levels of the team played well. Offense, defense, special teams, and also coaching. I thought they had a really good scheme as well. Arkansas this week at Tiger State. It's a 6 p.m. kick. It's on ESPN. Talk about, again, taking on the Razorbacks.
Well, LSU's a big favorite. When I first saw it, 17, 18 point spread, I was like, wow, because I watched Arkansas BYU last Saturday night. And yes, Arkansas lost the football game, and there are areas to attack here, but they're still a very talented team. KJ Jefferson's a difference maker at quarterback, but the Razorbacks offensively were playing without Rocket Sanders. Now, their offense can only come up with 24 points. They had a special team score against a BYU defense that's not anywhere near LSU's talent level. We don't know if Sanders, who's by far their best running back, he's a home run hitter, if he's going to play. Doesn't sound like he's 100% yet, but it's still a team that can put some points on the board, that can come up with explosive plays. But LSU is getting another gift to grow the confidence of their defense after Florida State, because Arkansas's offensive line cannot pass block. They were brutalized by BYU, particularly in the fourth quarter. If the officials would have called every hold I saw just watching on TV, every play would have been a holding penalty. You could tell they were overmatched when Arkansas had to throw the ball. So if the Tigers can take away the running game, they're going to have KJ Jefferson on the run most of the night. And on the flip side, they lost some good players to the NFL and graduation last year defensively, and they don't seem to have the team speed or the physicality up front. LSU should be able to, if they don't shoot themselves in the foot, move the ball consistently and score points too. So I could definitely see another blowout victory for LSU, which is so rare when you talk about the Arkansas series.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And of course, again, look, still again shaky on the back end for LSU in terms of the defense. You've got to be able to get a pass rush. The fact that again Arkansas is struggling with their offensive line. Good news for the Tigers as again they take on Arkansas in Tiger State. It's a 6 p.m. kick. Tulane will also have a 6 p.m. kick. They're coming off a 21-3 win over over USM, avenging that last year's loss to Southern Miss. They're 2-1. But before we go there, I want to talk about, again, Buddy Tevens. So, again, you've got your prayer intentions out. Please keep them for the Tevens family and the Tulane family. The former head coach, again, passed on Wednesday. He had got hit by a truck bicycling at night in Florida in March. He had suffered spinal cord injuries as well as, again, his right leg amputated. He was 66 years old. He was head coach of Tulane between 1992 and 1996. He was 11-45. But don't let that fool you, ladies and gentlemen. And I said this way back when, and I will continue to say it. I love Buddy Tevens, the buddy system as a coach. He redshirted his especially his linemen early, okay? So he redshirted a lot of players. And then, of course, when he was let go, Tommy Bowden comes in. He takes over. He takes, again, the nucleus of that team and goes 7-4 in 97, 12-0 in 98. Guys like Sean King and Dawson, you know, that were on that team. So again, when you think about the 98 undefeated team, you've got to put Buddy Tevens in the mix here for what he did. He really sacrificed his early part of his program by redshirting a lot of guys that ultimately ended up being a big part of, again, up until last year, was the greatest team in Tulane history.
Right, and as much as you give Tommy Bowden credit for those 2 seasons as the head coach, let's say Buddy Tevens sticks around and hires Rich Rodriguez.
Right.
I mean, do things look much different? Any different?
Much.
Did they look any different with a different head coach? It's Stevens' team,
they're
essentially.
undefeated.
Because Stevens has had success. He didn't have, it wasn't a good fit for him going to Stanford when they were struggling and hadn't figured out how they were going to compete as a high-level academic institution at that time. But what he was able to do at his alma mater, Dartmouth, showed you what a good football coach, because you're talking about all these programs in the Ivy League that are pretty much even. Coaching really matters, and he was consistently winning and competing for championships in that league because he's a good football coach. He's beloved by the Mannings as somebody highly involved with the Manning passing academy for all those years because he was a heck of a football coach, a heck of an organizer. His views on football safety ahead of its time for so many years.
Talking about the tackling dummy.
And saying, hey, we don't need to be tackling in practice. We don't want to lose the game of football that we love because it's too dangerous. And you can still have productive, capable teams on game day. We're seeing more and more of that now as a result. So he understood all those areas because he was a guy with an Ivy League education and a greater understanding of football and what was needed to be successful in football and for football itself to be successful. It's a shame he won't be remembered for somebody who was a steward of the game, because that's what he really was.
And an innovator, because you mentioned the tackling dummy. He comes up with this tackling dummy with the concussions to make sure that players are getting proper technique in terms of tackling. He may not have been, again, New Orleans born, but he was New Orleans certified, and people loved him here. And again, he will be missed and remembered by not just the Tulane family, people here in New Orleans. All right, Tulane did what was expected of them. Okay, after falling out of the top 25. I want to ask you this before we get into the game. You look at the group of 5 now, and you look at the teams across the board. Tulane's not getting a lot of respect since they lost to Ole Miss. A lot of those that are looking forward to bowl games, etc. They don't think Tulane will have an opportunity to again get into New Year's Day bowl again. What are your thoughts?
I think that's exactly wrong. Yes. I think right now, from what I've seen with Tulane Green Wave and what I try to watch as much football as I can, and I take so much from what they did to a South Alabama team returning basically all their starters, 10-win team in the Sun Belt last year. Just came off of going to Stillwater. 33-7 they beat Oklahoma State. I know Oklahoma State's not good this year, but they beat a Big 12 team into the ground on their home field. They're talented. Tulane made them look like an inferior team talent-wise. That's how good the Green Wave is in all aspects of the game.
Yes.
I don't think anybody on Tulane's schedule the rest of the way, if injuries don't really mount up, I don't think anybody on this schedule is going to beat Tulane. I think they're going to be 11-1 and playing in the conference championship game again. And if they win them all from here on out, they're going to be at home with a chance to go and be that representative of the group of 5 again.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there are people not paying attention. They have SEC lines.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the key. Veteran, good offensive line, and that defensive line is living in the backfield. Tulane, sometimes you just get lucky. Tulane was looking to replace Chris Hampton, who went to Oregon to be the co-defensive coordinator. He did a great job last year as the defensive coordinator. They hire Lance Guidry, who was doing a good job in different spots as a coordinator, was McNeese's head coach at one point. Then days later, he gets the Miami offer and leaves. So all they do is they grab Sheil Wood from Troy. This guy's not going to be at Tulane very long because he's ramped it up another notch. This defense is looking dominant from front to back.
Agreed.
They tackle well. They're always in the right position. And yeah, you got to have talent. They have it up front. They're dominating teams, including Ole Miss for a large portion of that game, making plays in the backfield, holding themselves up at the line of scrimmage against a good offensive line there. They're not going to see an offensive line as good as that the rest of the way.
No way.
Tulane's going to be able to win a lot of games like they did against Southern Miss, but they won't have to now that Michael Pratt is going to be back this week and moving forward. He just has to keep himself healthy because if he brings that little extra to the offense, they're going to outscore people because it's going to be hard to score on that defense with the teams they play in their league the rest of the way.
They've got backs. Okay, Hughes looks like he's going to be
power backs too, because having him and Shoddy Clayton, 2 guys that are going to move the chains, because that's what they need. It'll set up play action. So Jaquan Johnson, Lawrence Keys, I love what Chris Brazel brings to the table. They have other speed behind them to stretch the field. So they're a team that can win with the running game, play action, getting their receivers the ball in space and letting them make things happen, and have a defense behind them that doesn't look like it's going to give up very many explosive plays itself.
Jude, I couldn't agree more. They are underrated and underappreciated nationally, and I know they lost to Ole Miss, but again, a lot of those voters must have just looked at the final score and said, okay, instead of looking at the game itself.
There's no doubt, and wins will take care of that problem. They'll be back in the top 25. I think they're going to be playing SMU for the conference championship game, and the winner of that game is going to go to New Year's 6.
You were at the Greater New Orleans Quarterback Club, right? And they had David Griffin as one of the speakers talk about what he talked about when it came to Zion Williamson.
Now, you know, it's interesting because he's talking about Zion Williamson's commitment to fitness, the organization, the community, and really banging the drum about that. But you know, I know you asked me about that, but I think it was the bigger picture, and the theme of it was that we can only control what we can control.
Okay.
We can't control what happened to Trey Murphy, Jose Alvarado with the twisted ankle now, so you're going to miss time with 2 keys to your rotation. But he's saying there's an overall commitment to everybody, even the most grizzled veteran on the team, C.J. McCollum, being even more dedicated to his off-season fitness. So he's ready to go out the gates and can hold up over the course of a season and play his best. Griffin continues to bang the drum about culture. At some point, culture is going to have to turn into wins, and he understands that. But he's not backing off the idea of, we believe that we're building a culture here that's going to give us an edge in the NBA over the long term. If it doesn't play out this season, though, I mean, I don't know just how committed Gail Benson's going to be when that excitement over filling the arena is going to start to fade. If you can't trust Zion Williamson to be healthy, if Brandon Ingram's inconsistent because of health and because of who he is, we thought he was going to be dominant with the U.S. national team this summer. He was a non-factor. That was shocking. Yeah. So yeah, he's a player who has great strengths and great limitations, and those are your big 2. I don't know. Again, when I heard Buddy Hield was back on the block this year,
I'm glad you went there.
I figured you would, because they need more shooting, especially with Trey Murphy missing time.
You have to make that deal. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how, if you're
I don't know if you can, but you have to look into it hard.
Yeah. I mean, look, whatever you have to do at this point, because if you really truly think you're going to be a playoff team and you're missing your one shooter for at least 3 months of the year, and then if you bring a guy in like Hield, that only makes you stronger. To me, it's a no-brainer.
So you can have 1 or 2 shooters on the floor once Murphy's back with McCollum all the time.
Exactly.
I think they need that, because it's the only way Ingram and Williamson can play at their peak level offensively. They've got to have spacing. You've got to bring extra defenders away from the lane so they can work, whether it's Ingram in the mid-range and obviously allowing Zion to get to the rim. I can't look at this roster and not think that front office doesn't understand. I don't know if it's Hield, but if I hear he's on the block, I'm going to find out how far I'm willing to go to try to get him.
If Indiana's making those calls, they're not calling me, I'm calling you.
Right, exactly right.
Okay, because again, look, they made the mistake trading him to begin with, okay, for Boogie Cousins. It is what it is. It's not water under the bridge. It's another administration. But you have an opportunity, again, to bring in a guy that, again, that gives you exactly what you are missing in a Buddy Hield. And, you know, to me, if it's, you got draft picks from now until we have the Milwaukee pick swaps. Because the Milwaukee picks, you still have picks with the Lakers. You have your own picks. You do what you need to do, and you got to make that happen.
I hear this junk about, oh, you're going to be worse defensively. You know what? You've got to score in the NBA. And then late in games, you're mixing and matching. You're calling a timeout in a close game every possession. You're swapping out personnel. You'll get the lineup out there that has to get you the stops. But you got to know you've got the lineup out there that's going to get you the buckets first, or you're not going to win these games.
I'm with you. And of course, to me, you have to be aggressive this season. You've had a few seasons now where you keep telling us, again, the injuries have slowed us down. I get it. There's no guarantee you're going to be healthy. He said it. We can only control the things we control. Well, you can control bringing in an extra talent. I understand $3 million over the luxury tax threshold right now. You don't have to worry about that to the end of the season. Okay, and if you're winning, what did Ms. Spencer say? If we're winning, we have a chance to win something. She's willing to go over. We'll see how that plays out. Can you do it in a minute? Can you do it in a minute? Colorado, talk about it.
I mean, what Deion has done is made Colorado something that's bigger than college football, bringing in 10 million eyes playing Colorado State on a Saturday night. But he's also changing how recruiting and what type of coach and what type of personality that college programs should be willing to hire, because he's special. And the thing is, in the end, you have to have the foundation of being able to coach, put together a competent coaching staff, and put a team with a good game plan out there on Saturdays in the fall. And he's doing that too. But that personality is going to help you win in recruiting. That edge that you're going to need in the era of NIL and so many programs making it like an arms race and putting out so much money in their facilities. What's going to give a program an edge? A guy like Deion Sanders, who understands the modern culture, and especially as a black man who black players want to play for
Right.
because they can relate to him
Sure.
more. He's the real deal. And as long as he wants to maintain it, and he's a former superstar player and media personality who understands the game, understands what it's like to be a star, and understands the media, as long as he's dedicated to the work moving forward and doesn't pull an Orgeron like he did at LSU after winning a championship, he's going to win no matter where he goes, because he's going to get talent, and he has coaches like now Warren Sapp's begging to coach for him. There's coaches begging to coach for him. There's players that are going to beg to play for him. How's that guy not going to have success?
It is incredible. I've watched all their games, and I'll be watching again this week.
Exactly right.
This guy, huh? Jude Young, CrescentCitySports.com, 106.1 FM. Again, a plethora of knowledge. We love having him on the program. All right, so many ways to catch our program now. There's a QR code on your screen. Use your telephone to be able, again, your cell phone, rather. Telephones are long gone, right? Use your cell phone to click on it. It'll take you right to my website, ericasher.com, or the WLAE-TV or YouTube channel. You'll never miss the program. I will say this right now. Set your DVR. We have so many ways to catch our program. Pick your favorite time slot. You'll never miss the show. Catch me on the radio, 106.1 FM. That's 4 to 6 weekdays. You can listen live at ericasher.com. Also, the iHeartRadio app, TuneIn Radio app, or our digital platforms. Anchor Spotify is where you can find our podcast. Thanks so much to our underwriters who make this show possible, each and every one of them. Please support those underwriters. And again, special thanks to our friends here at WLAE-TV who make this show possible, do a great job putting it on every week. Okay, Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Logan Graffia, Danielle Wick, Alex Chacon, and the best director in the business, William Hill. For Jude Young, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.